Jaime Paul Lamb is an astrologer, a tarotist, practicing in the context of Western Occult Tradition. He's the author of 3 books on the subject of Freemasonry and Western Esotericism, Myth, Magic, and Masonry, Occult Perspectives in Freemasonry, Approaching the Middle Chamber, the 7 Liberal Arts in Freemasonry, and the Western Esoteric Tradition, and his new book, The Archetypal Temple, and other writings on Masonic Esotericism. And he's contributed to anthologies such as The Light Extended, A Journal of the Golden Dawn, Volume 2 and 3, and the soon-to-be-released Collectanea Hermetica, The Astrology of the Golden Dawn. He is currently Worshipful Master of Ascension Lodge number 89, Free and Accepted Masons, a frater of both the Arizona College of Societas Rosicruciana, Incivitadibus, Foederatus, and Hermetic Society of the Golden Dawn. He's a frater, a brother, and a great guy. Jaime and I are fraters in SRICF, and it's not often you get to sit down and have this type of conversation on the level. Jaime has an encyclopedic knowledge of all things Masonic and esoteric, which makes for a great combination for a great conversation.
Yeah, like we were talking, it was funny, like we were talking, you were like, it was either you or it could have been Gerald as well,
right.
A brother in Ohio, and somebody was like, well, John, you were like, either I do this podcast, UFOs on the level, or Gerald was telling me that.
Yeah.
And I remember standing in the parking lot with the both of you, and I was saying, well, yeah, I'm not really like a gray alien guy.
Right.
I'm not like a spaceship coming down and cattle mutilation and just peeking around the clouds and then just flitting away and stuff like that.
Right.
Like I think if that stuff were so ubiquitous and so common there, and I understand there is footage and there's tons of personal account, and I'm not trying to argue that point. I'm definitely not trying to argue that point. But I'm saying my personal kind of perspective is like, and then I was thinking, in my mind, I often tell people, well, I don't believe in aliens other than like panspermia. Right. I tell people that. But then I was talking to you guys in the parking lot. I think it was the Masonic Lodge we were at.
We were in Lima. We were in Lima, Ohio. Yeah,
Ohio.
Yeah, we did a Rosicrucian thing, and we were hanging out afterwards. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it occurred to me through, I think you sort of prompted me to go in this direction. It occurred to me that, oh my God, like aliens, like extraterrestrial intelligence,
right,
is different than, the colloquial alien or whatever.
Right. I think it was like off-world intelligence, I think is what I said to you. And you were like, boom, and I saw the wheels start turning, and you were like, wait a minute, that's a thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's a thing, but we paint it into this picture, like you said, of a little gray thing and,
right.
in a ship. But I mean, the connection to off-world intelligence is definitely there, man. Like that's been going on since time immemorial, right? And all of the mysteries, all the mystery schools or any initiatory, and of course, the amount of work you've done in your books are amazing, by the way. I mean, I love them. I just keep going through and I just keep reading. I try to speed. I speed read, but then I catch myself and I'm like, man, like our brother Jeff, his book of yours is like highlighted every single page.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I keep finding myself going back and then going off on that tangent. I can only imagine for you when you were writing these things, you were just kind of like, boom, and you'd find something and then you'd come back, and then that's kind of how I've been with this whole UFO thing. But I keep tying it back to my Masonic experience, my Rosicrucian experience, and all the other basically all the other mystery schools, and and what you've actually introduced to me and to our group as well is that in tarot as well, and how it all ties in, and especially with astrology, and it's
absolutely,
like, man, there's so much there to unpack. There's so much there.
So that's kind of what I mean is this idea. So when we talk about just anything that is extraterrestrial, that means like in the Neoplatonic or the Ptolemaic cosmological model, you have the terrestrial sphere. right? And all magic and astrology and Western astrology and the magical tradition in the West is based on this. They're three parts of a whole thing. That is the Hermetic arts, which are astrology, alchemy, and theurgy or magic, right? So those three things work in concert together. And when we talk about a cosmology upon which they're based, we use terms like the terrestrial sphere.
Right.
Just like we talk about in the pillars of the Blue Lodge, the terrestrial sphere and the celestial sphere.
Right.
And we always talk about the Hermetic kind of resonant relationship between the microcosm and the macrocosm.
Right. As above, so below, when you get into Hermetic principles. And, I'm always screaming that out loud.
Yeah. So that's what really fascinated me in that parking lot in Lima.
Right.
Was, oh my God, it finally clicked where, like, I don't have any issue with extraterrestrial intelligence because I frequently work in my personal magical practice with, and in my astrological practice with demons, and I should qualify that term.
Right.
Planetary familiars, not demons in the Linda Blair sense, like Pazuzu or whatever.
Yeah, like these guys. Right.
No, in the Platonic sense, in the ancient, like Platonic and Neoplatonic sense of a demon, a personal demon, which was not a good or bad entity, but it was certainly an extraterrestrial entity.
And those terms, correct? Yeah, they are. It's
a planetary, each planetary sphere. So back to that cosmology, and I know I just had a bunch of coffee.
Hey, good. Mazel tov.
But
I'm drinking some whiskey.
Oh, there you go. So having that terrestrial sphere, and then of course we know in the Aristotelian physics and in the Ptolemaic model that there's a terrestrial sphere of the elements.
Right.
It's the sublunary sphere because it's below the moon.
Below the moon. Right. That's where we are at. Right.
Exactly. And then there are the 7 classical planets in their order from the moon up to Saturn.
Right.
So that is to say the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, because this is geocentric.
Gotcha.
Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So those are the 7 heavens, the 7 planetary concentric spheres around the sphere of the elements, which is Earth, or Malkuth, if you prefer the Kabbalistic term.
Right.
So you get these 7 spheres on top of it, and each of those extraterrestrial spheres, because they are, by definition, extraterrestrial spheres, is associated with a certain planetary demon or a planetary familiar. And this goes back to Porphyry and Plotinus and Iamblichus, and certainly all the way back to Plato.
Of course.
So it's funny that just all kind of rushed in. I was like, everything from Plato and the Neoplatonists and their astrological demonic work in the classic sense, all the way through the Goetia, the Solomonic magic and the late grimoire tradition, all the way into like the 18th century, deep into the 18th.
Ceremonial type magic, it kind of evolved into that. Yeah, right.
Exactly. And into the Golden Dawn and things where we're working with theurgical sort of planetary entities and extraterrestrial entities.
Right.
And even into the early 20th century where you get Iwas and Lamb, Crowley working with these sort of hierarchical
archetypes in a way.
Yeah, holy guardian angels that are
right.
And look at how much I'm sure you've talked about how much Lamb looks like
a gray alien.
A gray alien.
Yeah.
So that is to say, to wrap that up in a couple of sentences, that we have this, essentially 2,500 year history that we know of, and certainly preceding that in Egypt and Mesopotamia.
Right.
But a notable history of theurgy, that is to say, working from the terrestrial sphere to make relationships and to invoke extraterrestrial intelligences.
Right. And it's worked, because if it didn't, there wouldn't be 2,500 years of it happening, right? Somebody would have been like, okay, that doesn't, we're going to go back to farming, or, you know what I mean? Like there had to have been something to it, and there is, because the traditions carry on. And, I think for Masonry, is where I got my start, and then, was invited to SRICF, and that's kind of where I met my homies, like where I met you guys, right? Where I kind of, my ilk, that's where I kind of fell in, and started getting into this. Your book with Magick and Masonry, perfect, man. I mean, that's a book that anybody can pick up, a Mason, non-Mason, and just get a good feel for Western Esotericism, the way that you lay it out, and in regards to how it ties to Masonry as well, because you do a fantastic job of that. But to me, I've never seen a body of work like you've done to put it all together in a way that makes sense, and it's easy for people to just understand. Like I feel like if you look at any of these entities, if you look at tarot, if you look at any of the even just the Hermetic part of anything, and Masonry or whatever, you don't necessarily draw the lines to those at all, and even people in Masonry don't do that as well. I mean, it takes a special mindset to step back and go, wait a minute, this kind of spurs on this, and it kind of draws into all these conclusions. And I think you did a really good job in that book as well, to just kind of tie that all together. And for me, I always saw those lines, and I think you said this before too, maybe in another podcast, or maybe just you and I talking, but it's like when you joined Blue Lodge, you're like, this is cool, but there's these nuggets of stuff that I can pull on. And I think that's kind of what you did. I'm not trying to speak for you, but is that kind of it? Like, you were like, wow, this is rad, and let me just dig into it. And you kind of tied it into everything, right?
Well, certainly, yeah, making connections and things like that, just trying to, it's that comparative, like, juxtaposing of ideas, and that sort of method is helps me to understand things. It's a sort of the method of analogy.
Right.
And when I square up tarot and astrology, for example, and just kind of like when I look at the work of the Blue Lodge and try and recontextualize it from some other idiomatic perspective, it kind of like it opens up different doors. It's just, I'm not saying, now here's my disclaimer about my methodology.
Yeah.
Is I'm not saying that there is tarot symbolism in situ in the Blue Lodge,
right,
at all. Right. I am saying that there is Blue Lodge symbolism in the Rider-Waite Tarot.
Of course.
I'll say it definitely goes that direction. Of
course.
But the work of the Blue Lodge, yes, you could look at it from the perspective of your typical taroic kind of work,
mm-hmm.
and from that symbol set and from that symbolic alphabet, you could see certain things in the right. Blue Lodge from that perspective. I'm not saying that they are objectively baked into the Blue Lodge.
Of course.
I'm so careful to never make claims like that. And I've never done it, never made a claim like that without qualifying it.
Oh, no. Yeah. And I'm sorry if I phrased it that way, but
no. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw, you can see that everybody that created the tarot had their hands in tarot were Masons.
Mm-hmm. At every single crucial developmental point in the evolution of the tarot, a Freemason was there. And we know that from the 18th century with Le Monde Primitif, mm-hmm. Anton Court de Gebelin, and the Comte de Malay. Both of them were Freemasons, and the Comte de Malay was the first one before Eliphas Levi who attributed the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet to the major arcana of the tarot. A Freemason did that. And then a Freemason put them in the Le Monde Primitif, and his thesis, Court de Gebelin, his thesis was that the tarot represented the collected wisdom of the Library of Alexandria.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, which is, a condensation or a reduction of that. And then after them was Eliphas Levi, who did a tremendous amount of taroic and magical work, and he was an entered apprentice Freemason. He didn't go further than entered apprentice.
Which I find amazing, because, if you read his work, it's kind of like, why? I mean, what stopped him? I mean, I don't know if you ever talked about that, or I don't know if you can infer any of that, but it seems like what...
I'm not sure.
It just seems like one of those things where it's like, you got that far. Yeah. Why don't you keep going? But
exactly. And look how much Eliphas Levi ends up in Morals and Dogma.
A lot.
Morals and Dogma contains large chunks of cribbed Eliphas Levi stuff. So then after Eliphas Levi, we've got Kenneth Mackenzie. who in the late 19th century. Well, he actually met Levy in Paris, and then he went. Yeah,
I forgot about that.
They had a meeting, and then he came back, and he was working on his tarotic stuff. He was SRIA.
Right.
He was also the Sat Baha'i and the Circle of Eight, I think was what they called themselves, with Hockley was in it and Yarker and people like that.
That's OTO, right? That's kind of where...
No.
That's, what was the...
You're talking Royce and...
oh, yeah.
Theodore Royce.
Sorry. Yeah, I got him. Yeah. Sorry. I got
pre-Crowley OTO.
Yeah,
not like McMurtry OTO like we have now.
Which I want to talk about too, and we'll get back to that. But yeah, sorry. I mean, to give everybody the tarot history. I mean, this is great stuff. Jim.
Yeah, weaves right through there, and then it goes into, of course, you got people like William Wynne Westcott, Samuel Little McGregor Mathers, who were both SRIA, and they were both founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1887, 1888. They had very developed tarot work and really finalized a lot of our correspondences thanks to Kenneth Mackenzie and the cipher manuscript that they found. So there's Freemasons at every point, and then into the 20th century you get, of course, Crowley, who was actually he was irregular at the time, but I think that there's a question about his regularity as a Freemason.
Yeah, there still is. I mean, I've heard many stories that he was not regular, or he bestowed the degrees upon himself or something like that. I can't remember.
He was made in a lodge, but the question is, was that lodge clandestine or not? So
gotcha.
I'm not trying to make that argument. Who cares?
Right.
I mean, essentially, but let's put Crowley in the mix with his Thoth deck, and then of course Paul Foster Case with Boda and all their tremendous amount of tarot work. Right. Manly P. Hall and Augustus Knapp made a tarot deck. I mean, every place you look, there's a Freemason there at every developmental or evolutionary point in occult tarot. There was every single time was a Freemason there. And I was telling that to Ted Korn. Yeah. Because Ted Korn, when we were there Saturday night up in Michigan.
Yeah.
At Doug's.
Yeah.
Ted Korn said, why the tarot? Why are we even messing around with that? And I understand.
I get it too.
He's like, why do we even need to? It's not in the Blue Lodge. And I was like, I totally agree. But I will say this, and I told him, just like I just said, at every single point in the development of the tarot, a Freemason was there. It's a body of symbols. What do we do as Freemasons?
That's our bread and butter, right?
Yeah. Why would it not attract our attention and our interest and our curiosity? And why would it not sort of dig up these mysteries? Why would it not evoke the mysteries through this symbolic language that's so intriguing and so magical and so widely applicable to myth and magic and masonry, like my book, and astrology and things like this, alchemy, these different images. It's just a fascinating, and
it wouldn't have lasted as long. That's the other thing. Like the same thing we were talking about. It wouldn't have survived through all these ages, right? At some point, I would have just been like, this is nonsense, right?
Some sort of fortune-telling curio.
Right. Yeah.
A divinatory thing for gypsies.
Yeah. And you know what's bizarre? I mean, so I'm not there's no way I'm an adept at tarot, not, and another brother, Robbie Franks got me into it.
Yeah.
And, Jeff, our other brother, got me into it, and Kevin, and, we got into it, and, everybody has their own style and whatever. Robbie has his own style too. And I kind of cribbed Robbie's style where, I don't know, the proper way to read it,
he's intuitive.
Yeah, he's kind of intuitive, and he kind of taught me along that lines too. And basically, he was just like, think about what you want to think about. Don't think about the future. Don't think about trying to predict something. Just think about something that's emotional to you, and just think about that and hold it. And he just hands me this deck, and I just pull a card, and I'm like, holy shit, that's it. And then that's the way I've done it for friends and family and stuff like that. And most of the time, it's just this one card.
Yeah.
And then I just read, the interpretation from a couple different sites, from Biddy and from the actual, Rider-Waite, the manual, and then
the little white book.
And then most of the time the people are just like, holy shit, just that one card. And I'm like, listen, this is you connecting to that. It's not me doing anything. I am just like the phone that you pick up or the receiver from the speaker, from the radio. I'm just helping you tune, you tune into whatever you need to. I'm just going to try to, be the vehicle for you. And most people are like, cool, and I've seen people just get upset because it brings out stuff in them that, that hits home so hard for them. And it's just this one thing. And I'm like, even if they just look at the photo without even giving the description, sometimes people just look at the symbology on that card and go, oh,
as they should do before we describe it to them. I think give them a chance to have the immediacy of a relationship with the symbols before we intellectualize them or before we over theorize them. I think that's a very like Jungian approach in that you get like that intuitive synchronistic approach where you're drawing a card at random, but synchronicities are described as meaningful coincidences.
Right. Right.
So if we're pulling a random card, it has that element of chance. It has that opportunity to be synchronistic. It has especially if we have some sort of thought in mind, and then there's this randomized sort of bridge, and then there's this image before us that sort of is somehow, we have to somehow make sense out of that symbolically.
Right. And, it's funny. I've documented this and I couldn't believe it either, but, my daughter's 3, I'm screwing around, shuffling the deck. I'm like, here, hand her a deck, just fan it out, right? She pulls a card. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Shuffle it up. She's pulled the same card 3 times out of a shuffled deck. And so I text all the guys and they're like, well, that's a 1, somebody did the math and it's like, it's a 1 and whatever, and she's not old, you can't tell her to try to think about whatever. She's just pulling a card out of the deck, and I'm like, this kid, it's amazing how, I couldn't do that again. There's no way. And so it's amazing how whatever that is a thing, and
it's funny how, because there is this element of occultism and mystery, capital M, and esotericism around the tarot because of Masonic involvement, frankly.
Right.
That's where occult tarot comes from, our the Freemasons sort of intrusion and guiding of the lineage of the tarot, at least since the 18th century, like we were talking about. So bringing it back to, in the family environment, having a kid and my wife, because of me getting into tarot, she ends up getting the crow tarot or animal tarot or these novelty tarot, whereas I'm pretty purist. I'm like a Tarot de Marseille guy.
Right. You're just
that's all I really touch anymore. I did Rider-Waite for 10 years. And then I finally was just like, you know what? I got to go to these stark, really strong woodcutty type of images because
the source images, pretty much the root. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It just was speaking to me and at a more deep level. And I was getting more out of it without Waite's interpretations, obscuring things, that's just me. I'm not critiquing Rider-Waite. It was a great deck for a long time for me. Anyway, but around the families and this sort of patina of occultism around tarot, a lot of people would be, it's a pretty puritanical attitude, but a lot of people would be like, what are you bringing your daughter around a bunch of occulty stuff for?
Yeah, but no, you're right.
They're a deck of cards.
Yeah, Beelzebub's not going to jump out of the closet now that I pulled a pack of cards out, right?
Right.
I mean, everybody gets that twisted thing, but we were talking about this maybe before we started recording, maybe when we started recording, but everybody has this interpretation that that I've been doing this podcast, and it's basically it's UFOs on the level, right? So I'm talking about, but my whole goal behind this is I've really been excited about this basically my whole life. I've been trying to study it. And, when I got into Masonry and I started drawing connections as well, and I really wanted to be able to find other brothers that were into it as just like me, so I could talk to people on the, not only just, but I was really interested in Masons and how their interpretations were, with the whole thing and their connections. And, I've met some great brothers out there. I've met some other people that aren't, in any of our degrees or, our societies. And, yeah, I think everybody has a little bit to add to it. And I've, but I get that all the time. Like, oh, you're a Mason, you guys are devil worshipers, you're the Illuminati and all this stuff. And it's like, no, what I did is when my podcast on YouTube, after you have to get so many views and so many subscribers or whatever, you get monetization. And I still don't even know how much that is. Like, it just happened last month or whatever. But what I've decided to do is I'm donating every cent I get to Shrine Hospital for Children. I'm just going to, like everything, I'm just giving it to them because I'm doing this just for fun. This is just what I enjoy. And it's just, like a hobby for me. So and I don't care, and those kids need the help. And, I'm giving it to it. Like Shrine is a perfect example of that. That just, philanthropy is just amazing. So,
yeah,
everybody gets it real twisted, but, but I get into some weird stuff, and it's not, it's just me. It's not, the Masonic thing. It's not the SRICF stuff. It's not, anything else. I mean, it's just kind of what I've always been passionate about. So, meeting you was awesome, man, because some of the stuff that you're into just blows my mind. And some of the stuff that you've had working relationships with in your practices are kind of analogous to what I've been kind of searching for in regards to this non-localized off-world intelligence,
Yeah.
And that people have described that throughout history, throughout time immemorial. It's either God or it's a deity, whatever, right? But it's always happening, and it continues to happen to this day. And there's magical practices and ceremonies and things like that people still continually do to invoke these things. And there's real world effects.
Yeah, and I know we were, I'm not going to front you off about this, but I know we were talking about entheogens at one point too.
Right.
Now, I don't mind talking about it myself personally. Yes, I've done dimethyltryptamine. I've made it before from acacia in my kitchen.
That's amazing. So the sprig of acacia holds a big place in Masonic lore. And when I found that out, I was like, holy shit, that's a whole different dynamic to that whole entire degree and what that's part of, without revealing any secrets. But that's a big deal, right?
And when we're talking about that, we're talking about precisely P.D. Newman's thesis. Right. His acacia thesis. So he discovered that from basically nobody had seen that. And then all of a sudden, P.D. Newman comes out with this mind blower. And I was reading his early articles online and, on Reality Sandwich and on Disinfo and things like that. Yeah. And his first book I read. And
Alchemically Stoned is his first book, right? Was that his
Alchemically Stoned, yeah.
Great book, yeah.
So before I had even talked to him, I had looked up how to, various texts, they call them, online to make the tea.
Yeah.
So I ordered the component parts, the MAOI, the Prima materia, a reasonably simple alchemical operation, takes about 2 weeks. I made it in my kitchen. There's an extraction method and things like that. No unusual gear or anything. And then I ritualized the taking of it.
Right.
And I had entity contact the first time.
That's amazing.
And it was, again, I'll tell, I don't feel like I'm profaning the experience by saying that there was a fractal sort of orange mosque that I was standing in front of, and then over my right shoulder, I could tell that there was some sort of being there. And
was it a comfortable feeling or like a ominous feeling, or was
it was ominous?
Okay,
it was a little ominous.
Okay,
and then it kind of turned the corner out of my peripheral vision, and it was like an Anubis jackal man. It was like a canine guide
with like a staff, like the staff and everything like that.
I don't remember a staff, but I remember it was an Anubis.
Wow.
Yeah. So that and then I had entity contact a couple other times later. Now, I'm not saying this is euphoric. I'm not saying it's pleasurable. I'm not saying it's something that I don't see how anybody could get like hooked on that and use it for euphoric kind of to get away, because it's precisely the opposite of getting away. It's like getting in too much. Like it's like,
it's intense. You're like basically in the fetal position, kind of crawled up at some point, right? I mean, it's kind of like,
yeah, it's intense, not pleasurable, but it is valuable. So I've done it less than 10 times, and this was some years ago now.
Right,
You know,
right.
and I in fact dread it. I'm fine if I never do it again, but I will say that there was entity contact several times.
Was there any Was there any message or communication that you would like, the overall arching theme or message?
Not that first time, but another time. And let me bring this into the context of your show.
Yeah.
This is like, when we're talking about that experience, we're not necessarily talking about some inner subjective experience, because there's some objectivity to it.
Of course.
Many people will report similar images.
Right. There's a big thing about the machine elves. That was one of the things that were...
The machine elves and the mantoid things with eyes. I've seen some of them before.
Like the mans, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of common images that would imply that there is it basically supports Jung's idea of the collective unconscious in some ways, right?
Of course.
So non-local intelligence, like we're talking about with, an alien in the alien intelligence,
right?
And so yeah, and I did get an equation from. I met these Ethiopians from, somehow I knew, just like in dream logic, certain things. I knew that they were from the year 4049.
Wow.
And I was in CE 4049, like 2000 something years from now.
So not like AL.
No.
Like CE. Okay.
Yeah. They were from the future by a couple millennia.
Right.
And they gave me this square root equation that had something, and I wrote it down after the thing, and I still have the index card that I wrote it on.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. I haven't really unpacked it yet. And they introduced me to those mantoid, Mayan sort of mantoid features who had creatures rather, or entities that had a central vertical mouth. In the middle of their face. They had this vertical mouth, and then around it there were just rows of eyes, black like almond eyes, like mantoid eyes. And the male one came up to me, and he was like, and I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. And then he had me talk to the matriarch, and she came up and was buzzing like that too, in some sort of mechanistic kind of insect language.
Right.
And I was like, I laughed a little bit, because it wasn't like...
You're like, I don't know what to do with this.
I was like, I am so sorry. I can't. I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't understand what you're trying to say to me.
Yeah.
And then that ended. That was the last time I had any entity contact, and that was probably 3 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing, man. So were they bipedal? Were they like us?
Yeah.
Arms, legs, like 2 arms, 2 legs, kind of.
These ones were, yeah.
Yeah. Like clothing, any of that? Like it just...
Yeah, it was weird, because the 2 Mayan ones had like ponchos on. Oh. Yeah, like clothing, like ponchos. Whereas the Ethiopians, they were just like, they looked like, you ever see the Miles Davis record Bitches Brew?
Yeah.
Yeah, they looked like they should be on the cover of Bitches Brew by Miles Davis.
That's rad.
That's what they looked like.
That's cool. And they were speaking English to you, though, right? They were speaking.
That was more of a telepathic thing.
Okay, gotcha. They were just.
But boom. Yeah.
But there wasn't any like they weren't telling you need to know this. Look, it was just kind of like, hey,
they transmitted that equation somehow, or I in fact sort of intuited it from I was in their transportation hub. There was like how they move around and stuff, and the impression I got was that equation had something to do with how they move around.
That's awesome. We need to get that out. Somebody's going to unpack that for us, and we could probably like make that happen.
Imagine if somebody who knew what they were looking at kind of worked out or engineered that equation, and then they were like, holy shit,
that's what that is.
This is actually gravitational sort of stuff or something. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's amazing. There's a Dr. Diana Pasulka has a book out called oh God, my brain just stopped. It'll come to me in a minute. But anyways, she's the head of South Carolina Religious Studies for I can't remember the college there now. And she has a book that's out that's basically talking about all this stuff, and people are gonna jump up and down and kill me if I don't Google it. But anyway,
I'll edit it in later.
Yeah, I'll edit it in. But anyways, this book, she's talking to these people, and there's this guy that she's talking to, and then they use fake names for this guy, but he's basically an NASA employee. He's at the highest levels of government. He's worked there. He's got clearances for everything. There's agencies we don't even know about. At one point, they go to the Vatican. They go to the secret archives with him, all this stuff. But his whole entire thing is that he communicates with off-world intelligences all the time. And he has a protocol to do it. And what he does is he gets these ideas, and most of them are for medical patents and things like that, and for devices, for surgeries, and medical patents. And he's like a millionaire because of it. These things come to him, and he actually like makes them happen. But he communicates with this off-world intelligence, and they're giving him like the most amazing stuff. They take her out they blindfold her and take her out to the middle of the desert where they know there's this crash that happened in the pre-Roswell in the 40s. They call it the gifting field, and they have special
pre-Roswell. So what was that? 47, right?
Yeah, 47. There's some crashes that happened. 45, 46. There's a book Jacques Vallée just came out with called Trinity that happened. It happened like 2 weeks after the Trinity, the first test of the bomb out in the desert. So there was a crash there, and
in New Mexico.
In New Mexico, there's a giant field of all kinds of things that happened in that ring there where we were testing the first nuclear bombs, and they pick up these articles. They call it the gifting field because there's just pieces of a craft out there all the time. And she didn't believe any of this shit going into it, right? Until she's actually experienced it. It's a really good book. So I mean, it's when you get into that whole thing, it's just kind of like, this guy is doing this. He doesn't drink coffee. He doesn't. He does all these things, right? And he basically is communicating with this off-world intelligence that's giving him all these patents and ideas and like formulas and all of this shit. And he's actually making it into real world stuff where it's making him rich. So that formula could be it, man.
Yeah, could be my key to retirement.
For sure. I mean, but it's completely doable. I mean, all of these things that are out there, and it's just how do you tie it all together? And I think you're doing the work. I mean, you're tying all of these. I wouldn't say disparate things together, but the way you just figure things out and go, this is this, and this makes sense, and then you go deep and figure out how it all comes together. It's just amazing, man.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of connections to be made, and when we make those connections, I mean, here's the thing: is what I hope to get across in my methodology is that, and my approach to specifically Masonic research, but also the broader, just researching Western esoterica and occultism and stuff, is that Freemasonry is a living, evolving tradition, right? Mm-hmm. It's so I don't look at it like it's just, okay, we're gonna just freeze frame 1723 when we get the Hermetic tragedy. And now that we have these 3 degrees in 1723 or whenever it was, right? Let's just stop it right there, and we know what Freemasonry is, and we will, I think we need to respect the tradition,
right,
and respect the lineage and respect the history, but I don't think it's a closed book. I don't think it's, I think there is further light. Why would we even talk about further light if all the light was already bestowed, right?
Right. American Cosmic. That's the name of the book. It just came back. American Cosmic is the name
American
of the book.
Cosmic.
Yep. Diana Pasulka. She's theology. She's the chair of theology, I think, at some big university in South Carolina. Sorry, it just came back.
What do you think about You know what's kind of interesting to me is I'm not like an ascended masters guy. I'm not into Blavatsky theosophy. I
Right.
do like German theosophy, like Jakob Bema and people like that. Like classic, German theosophy is, Christian theosophy is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but Blavatsky's sort of East-West synthesis of theosophy and her ascended master doctrine that she of course gets from various Hindu sources, I guess,
And Tibetan as well. She got a lot of the stuff from Tibet as well. Yeah.
exactly, Tibet as well. So while I'm not an ascended master proponent,
Mm-hmm.
I am interested in like Pleiadian intelligence, or the Hyades, or because I am an astrologer, I'm
Right.
deeply interested in astrology. So I wonder, and the reason why I bring up the Pleiades in the context of ascended master doctrine
Yeah.
is because they're a lot of the times conflated,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Of course.
And when they are conflated, they're usually put in the context of ufology.
Of course there is, because there's so many different contact experiences people have had throughout the years that have been like, yeah, we come from the Pleiades. Billy Meyer was the biggest one, I think, that kind of pushed all that. Then the modern times anyway these are Plagiarin, I think he called them. There was entities that are Nordic looking, tall, blonde, beautiful,
Right.
men and women that are from this system, and they've came here to teach us all these things and help humanity evolve and all. But yeah, you go back to the Hindu text, and then even farther than that when you get into the Tibetans. And then you and I were talking about this a little bit, and I'm not a master of this at all, or know everything, but like the Vril society from pre-World War II, and then Germany, and then Germany as well, and that's all directly related to the Blavatsky
Thule?
yeah, Thule
Yeah, right.
society, yeah, right. So that's they claimed they were in contact, and it was through the Tibetans as well. And it always kind of goes back to Tibet. When you get that high, for me, I'm just thinking, that higher elevation. I don't know.
The Himalayas, I don't know.
Yeah, like maybe they're closer to whatever that's going on, or maybe they have a better way of hiding it, or keeping those traditions, bound. But they were same thing. They were claiming they were having conversations with off-world intelligence as well through the Thule Society and all that, and that was like basically subjugated by the Nazis and taken into, and that kind of created their whole SS and their whole, that where that occultism kind of took over, World War II, where, they were doing all those, they were doing seances, they were doing all these things. They're trying to gain information. And some people theorize that they did get information from these off-world entities that kind of gave them, plans for anti-gravitics and things like that for basically discs, right? Flying discs and things like that. And there's a lot of research, and people spend a lot of time getting into that and kind of drawing some really strong conclusions, at least from the fact that if it was real or not, the Nazis believed it, and they used it and they integrated it into their upper echelon of hierarchy in their world domination plans.
Yeah.
So it ties to the Aryan race and and all that other stuff that they did, where they just basically latched onto that part too. And then
bringing Blavatsky back in, she talked about the Aryan race as well being sort of I think they're like basically Proto-Indo-European.
right.
They're Indo-Aryan.
Right.
So I don't know if she's meant it in the same context as they did in the Third Reich about how
the dominant race and the master race and all that
stuff. Or blonde hair, blue eyes, or anything like that. I think she envisioned them more like Indo-Aryan. I could be wrong. I don't know a whole lot about it, but
it's a slippery slope, because nobody likes to get into any of the Nazism and the Aryans and the master race, and that just gets into
it's a tab. I mean, still for some reason, again speaking to that Puritanism, it's a taboo subject. But the longer it's a taboo subject that nobody wants to talk about it, the harder it is to access and just be like, hey, we're adults here,
right?
like let's just so there's a couple of things about it, right?
Right.
Their interest in occultism, I thought, was pretty prescient, because now it's like, now we actually do have neo-pagan groups and things like that.
We do.
Whereas at that time they were reconstructing their mythos.
Right.
They were kind of putting the pieces, and yes, there was ethno-nationalism involved in that.
Right.
Never a great thing. But still, any reason to get your mythology back together and to reconstruct of sort of feeling with your, they would say the fatherland, right?
Right.
So,
your ethnocentric roots of your own mythology.
Right. It's holistic to do that.
Right.
We don't demonize the Native Americans for being into the Great Spirit here in their land, you know what I mean, and having a connection with the land where they live and from whence they sprang.
Right.
Why would we demonize any culture for having a deep connection with their cultural mythological sort of paradigm? So I don't have a beef with any of that. Of course, they had we all know they're bad ideas. we know what the Nazis' set of bad ideas were.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever contesting that. I don't know of anybody who's contested that. But what we can talk about is, where did they get this super cool technology? What prompted them to get their cultural mythical kind of thing together again, which was a great move. I think that's cool.
Right.
And how did they get the most bitchin' outfits out of and gear and regalia and like stuff? Mm-hmm. Their regalia and their sculptures and
the symbology is so rich, isn't it?
Strong. Yeah.
It's real strong. I mean, all of it is. It's just like, and it's profound. When you think of it in terms of symbology and just the visual symbology, we take it back to what we were talking about earlier. When you just look at this tarot card, I'm not going to tell you anything, but just look at it. What does that mean? I mean, like, there's a skull and crossbones on the top of this. The SS's head. It's
a death's head.
Yeah, it's like that's saying a lot without saying anything.
Yeah, and their use of runic characters.
Right.
And the swastika itself.
The swastika itself has been bastardized into in my 2 cents, it took something that was amazingly positive and inspirational and, like, I would say a token close to enlightenment, and turned that thing and made it the most evil symbol recognizable. And
we're still kind of recoiling from that, which is a shame, because if you look at the literally millennia of the swastika being a pre-literate sort of a pole star symbol.
It is.
It's like the Ursa Major going around the pole star.
That's a great way to
It's been carved into stone on, I think, every continent over from prehistory, like a pre-literate symbol of essentially axial precession in some sense, right?
Right.
And an ancient symbol, and then its use in Jainism, and its use in Eastern
Buddhism,
sort of thing,
like everything, right?
And then its use in the Americas, every continent. This symbol has appeared, and now all of a sudden, in the little piddly 20th century, about 2 decades in there's some misuse of this symbol, and now it's like verboten. Pardon the pun.
No, but seriously, I mean, it is. You're right. I mean, and was there a divine plan for that? Was there not? I mean,
who knows?
But it's amazing to look at it that way.
It's a striking, powerful symbol.
It is.
In
either regard. But somebody's bastardized it. In my mind, somebody's taken a powerful symbol and made everybody's initial gut reaction to be that that's evil and that's bad.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, it never ever was.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to wonder, like, and the Nazis' appropriation of that symbol, no accident.
No, nobody just said, "Hey, this is cool. Let's make that our thing." Right. So there was some real thought, or maybe off-world intelligence. Somebody directing them, into that whole thing. Yeah, no, it's really cool, and you brought up a good point, and I have not delved at all, like one iota, as much as you have in astrology at all, at all. But I see, just from reading your work and everything like that, how much everything that's above us influences us here on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And and once I started, getting into your work and things like that, and when I saw you read, charts for 2020.
Yeah,
it was amazing. And I would love for you to talk to me about that for just 1 second. Like I think it was pre-2020, and you were like, went through like almost every month, or a couple month period, and you were like, this is kind of how it goes, and you just like everything, and it's like right there, right? I mean,
well, the culmination of the year, which I think there was a Saturn Pluto square. I think there was some really gnarly aspect with Saturn and Pluto early on in the year. I forget now.
That's what it was. Oh yeah. But then the conjunction was
exactly. So the conjunction, what was strange about that, this happens every 20 years. Right. We'll get a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, a great conjunction. But this one was different for a few reasons, because we were passing into air signs. Right. So we passed into Aquarius. It happened on the 1st degree of Aquarius, and it happened on the day within 2.5 hours of the exact winter solstice.
Wow.
The partile winter solstice with a partile conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn on the 0 degree in the 1st degree of Aquarius, passing for the first time in, I want to say 400 or 600 years or something like that, into an air sign. So we've moved a trigon, what they call a trigon. So there's great conjunctions happen in an elemental triplicity for about 400 or 600 years. I forget.
Right.
But they happen in a certain elemental triplicity, and then over that period of time, they move into another one. Generally, there's some wiggle room. Mm-hmm. But we moved into air signs. Now, this is what's strange as well. Nobody's ever clearly marked our passage into the Aquarian age, right? And I think a lot of people, due to how literal the astrology of 2020 was, I mean, it was mirrored micro macro. It was like a mirror. The sky was on the earth, and they were projecting and in this relationship, and it was
as above, so below, right?
Exactly. It was like the most astrologically hermetic year. Like even squares in the regular, just general public so many people got into astrology in 2020. I'm sure.
For sure.
It's so popular now. Anyway, but the Aquarian age, I'm thinking, for my money, that's kind of our cusp. Mm-hmm. I'd say 12, 21, 20, when the great conjunction ingressed Aquarius on the winter solstice. That's a pretty powerful astrological nodal point, and I would feel comfortable, specifically this far on in our Piscean sort of Piscean age symbolism with Christianity over the last 2,000 years.
The fish, the womb,
the whole thing, the Wessica Piscis.
Wessica Piscis, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that I'd feel comfortable saying we have passed into the Aquarian age at this point, which, for better or worse, because air signs are technology, humanitarianism, for better or worse. So we're in Aquarius now. Mm-hmm. And is this does Aquarius, it could say transhumanism, right. It could mean, tech, like AI. That's a very Aquarian concept. Where we're heading is precisely Aquarian. If you look at the astrology, where we're heading is Aquarian age stuff, and we've just passed into that cusp. So people like Elon Musk, love him or hate him, he says the biggest existential threat to mankind at this point
AI
is AI.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's like it's right there. It's right in front of us. And I completely agree with you, because we're entering, it's almost like, and I hate to say this, with COVID, it's like the old axiom is dying. Now it's literal. I hate to say that, but it's almost like it's the, it's the progression into that. And you're looking at it, we're talking about, AI being sentient, the singularity point where technology reaches a singularity. I mean, it's probably honest. I mean, it's probably been here for at least 40 years from all of my research and everything that I've known, and anecdotally, and then through people that have been involved in all this stuff, is that everything that comes out, like, this iPhone, this is 40-year-old tech. This is 40 years old, right? To the military industrial complex, they have stuff that's out there that's 40 years more advanced than this, right? Easy all day long, right? So we've definitely reached that singularity where it's just, there's no separation between AI and humanism. I think the last frontier here is consciousness, and how that ties into everything. And I think that because we're coming into this new age, and because man is kind of evolving, I honestly believe that we're in a stage of evolvement where we're gaining more use of our consciousness in ways that are frightening to some people, but definitely
it's terrifying.
But other people that are maybe more initiated in the experiences have more control.
True. I would say that my issue, I gotta just say, my fear is that if let's say this, if we pass into like silicon based life forms, as opposed to carbon based, but our consciousness is transferred into, as data points and things like that.
Right.
Or let's say this, I know this sounds crazy, and I'm just saying it just because. And
I love that we have to you don't have to preface that.
Yeah. So this sounds crazy, but let's say this 5G rollout thing. Let's just say that we are being harvested as memory banks, as networks, through, again, another crazy thought. Let's say you've taken a vaccine that has certain metals in it, and let's say these metals are making it so you have you can ping off of this network, and let's say that through these metals and through these other introductions of whatever sort of nanotech, that and it sounds like science fiction, maybe it is, whatever. So let's say that the harvesting and the manipulation of consciousness is being laid out in a grid gradually over time, to where the human being can become a meme, or some sort of meme in this data grid, right? Just some sort of this fractal little component, but also a slave to consciousness, meaning that if there are people who, let's say there's some nefarious entity or agency, maybe superhuman, maybe preternatural, maybe, extraterrestrial.
Off-world intelligence, right?
Right. That is all of a sudden colonizing as a data center, the Earth, and then we get immortality. But do we want immortality? I don't want that immortality. I want to physically die one day. You can't cheat me out of the experience of death. I mean, it's the other part of life. I mean, it's so
right.
I don't want to be a forever slave to consciousness. I want my identity to dissolve again, and join some sort of whole or whatever happens.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I think that's probably...
So that sounded nuts, right?
No. I think it's probably way more closer to what a lot of people, feel in regards to what's going on. Like, I think we're standing on a precipice.
Yeah, and there's scary shit going on right now.
And then people are, there's a lot of people just wavering. There's a lot of people want to go backwards, and a lot of people want to go forward. There's a lot of people just standing on the edge, going, I don't know what to do, and they're looking for something. And what I'm afraid of is that whatever this thing is, whether it's an ultra-terrestrial, where you and I have talked about this, where it's from the earth and it's always been here. It's fairies. It's trolls. It's the lights in the sky. It's it's gnomes. It's things like that. It's the earth.
Earth entities.
Earth entities that are all here. They've always been here, and they're presenting themselves as what we collectively, unconsciously, or maybe even consciously now expect. So there's advanced craft in the sky, right? And I think one of my thoughts is that if that's what it is, and we're collectively creating these entities and these things, that either we can go two ways with this. One is that it itself can present itself as a savior or some type of all powerful godlike entity, right? Or the return of Jesus or something like that, right? But Muhammad is back, whatever. I'm here to save everybody's sins, and and it's all for self good. And the other part of that is that governments, like I just said, and this cell phone's 40 years old. What if they can somehow manipulate consciousness and or the ability to do that at a global scale and do that themselves for their own ends, whereas they're going to present the coming, our space brothers, Space Jesus, right? He's going to come back, and Space Jesus is your guy now, right? Like he's the guy, but do that for their own ends, So there's, 2 or 3 things, but then like you said, well, maybe it's something completely different where we can't even fathom what's going on with this, global kind of, takeover. But I think that like when we get together, like you and I and our brothers and things like that, I think that we have a power that's untold. I think we have a power that between all of us and our collective unconscious and even our consciousness that we've been lied to about for antiquity, that we don't believe that we're the strongest beings in the universe. We don't believe that we are gods in our own selves. And I think that's going to be the biggest like hoodwink ever. It's kind of like
we certainly have power as individuals, right? We could essentially vote with our dollars and with our attention,
right?
Like for instance, I'm not on. Yes, I have an author page on Facebook that my sister-in-law hosts.
Right.
I don't have a Facebook or a Twitter or a Snapchat or a Instagram or any of that stuff because I think that they're terrible systems.
Right.
I think that they're pernicious. I think that they're toxic. I think that they're actively detrimental to the human experience. So I don't like to participate in that. Yes, for publishing reasons, I got to have this author page.
Right.
Just it helps, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a slippery slope, and I'm not perfect.
Right.
So it's the same thing like with my vegetarianism. I'm not perfect, but I
try.
I try.
Yeah.
And it's everything in life, If we're a good microcosm, if microcosmically we try to embody our ideals, I feel that that's the very best thing that we can do for the macrocosm is try and be, because my sphere kind of ends at my skin almost, you know what I mean? My sphere of influence.
Yeah.
I can do the best that I can with my time, my attention, and, my efforts and my ideas and things, and just try and do the best. And I'm not saying there's a them. I'm not saying there's some boardroom that's some evil cabal of, governmental Satanists who are reptilian beings and they're adrenochrome addicts and they're, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but I am saying this, that, the old parable or whatever it is about the blind man and the elephant.
Right.
One of them had the tail, one of them had the trunk, one of them had the ears, and they all had a piece of the elephant, but they didn't know that it was an elephant.
Correct.
So here's what I'm saying could be the case. That no, while I don't believe in an evil cabal that is like, we want to destroy the world and everybody in it, and we want people to be miserable and we want to exploit them. I'm not saying that there is a group of people who actively say that.
Right.
What I am saying is that there are people who are participating in that who don't even know that they're participating in that. I'm saying that their egregore through their actions, their egregore together, their collective thought form is that evil, pernicious entity, and they don't even know that they're contributing to it.
Right.
You know,
Nobody knows that they're bad guy. I always say this, like nobody goes, yeah, we're the bad guys. And like nobody ever goes, yeah, we're the bad guys. That doesn't happen. It's
we're the bad guys. Let's go.
Yeah.
They think they're the good guys.
Yeah, which is even more fucked.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure the Klan and the Nazis all thought this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, we're the good guys. Everybody else is bad. Everybody's gonna love us. You know.
Right.
Oh man, no, that's it, man.
So yeah, maybe I don't. So I have a hard time when, you know, we speak in terms of, yeah, and you know what they're doing now, as if there is a they. You know,
there's not a they.
Right.
No, I mean,
there kind of is, but they don't know they're even the they. You know what I mean?
Right. Which is probably a blessing and a curse.
Well, true. And that's the extricating yourself and getting some objectivity on what is the reverberation of my actions in the world. So when we participate in sick systems,
yep,
we're feeding the growth of a sick system, and that whether it's factory farming, or whether it's, you know, any sort of animal cruelty or anything like that, whether it's exploitative to some other culture, some culture of little brown people in somewhere else in the world that we don't care about because we can't see them. You know what I mean? It's
one type of never-ending loop,
right,
that we're all a part of. And like you said, we can do the one thing, like you could do the one thing, I could do the one thing, but collectively we can do these things together. And I think that I hope that we get to the point where we see that together we're more powerful than separate, that we are powerful, you know, more powerful than anything alone, but together we're way more powerful, you know, for the good. But of course, like you said, for the bad as well, whether you're conscious of it or not. But I think that, you know, getting people to like, man, I mean, it's only been a few years that I've just tried to start to meditate. But I mean, you know, like I said, I don't do it well, and you know, and I try, and same thing. I fall off the wagon. You know, I can't do it, but just a little bit to be able to know that you can do that, and you can make direct positive changes about yourself. Mm-hmm. in your own life is massive, and that's in the Western culture is completely, you know, it's thrown into the likes of tarot, it's thrown into the likes of, you know, other, you know, mystical things that we just think are bullshit in America, where I think that, you know, that would be a huge benefit to the majority of the world if we did something like that. And that's an all inner practice. It's an all, you know, a thing that you can do. So we can get there, man, but it's just going to take some work. And I think that with the conjunction with everything that's going on, I think it's a big time for things that are happening. It's kind of,
I hope so.
You got to be on your toes, man.
I hope, you know, and isn't that it's what we do, what we claim to do in Freemasonry is make good men better, right? Mm-hmm. So we vet people, good men, you know, we find people who are trustworthy, who we think can be responsible with our secrets and our mysteries.
Right.
And if they could be responsible with our secrets and mysteries, they may get initiated into our order, right? Our fraternity.
Right.
So, and then we proceed to hopefully give them the tools, the working tools, to become better men through the invocation of deity, through the liminal, transformational sort of rites of passage that we are the custodians of as Freemasonry, this suite of transformational degrees that we have, you know, and then hopefully through that process, you know, then we get light, more light, further light, until finally we could see our place in the world. We could see the ripple effect of our actions. We could see how, you know, we can more readily discern what is an unethical pursuit from an ethical pursuit, what is, you know, morally and intellectually kind of desirable, and then try and steer our lives, you know, and consequently those around us into a more mutually beneficial kind of direction.
And that's amazing. And I think that, you know, I mean, I think that's kind of what America is. America's founded by Freemasons. This is the grand experiment. We did that here. We tried to do it here. Let's make this happen, you know. And so far, it's worked, you know. And
we're the freest, I think there are many metrics by which, we're the most ethnically varied place. We're arguably the least racist country on the surface of the planet. Because if you were to go to an ethno-state like Japan or Korea or Kenya or places like this where it's like, or Poland or something where it's like, these are ethno-states, America is a melting pot. Everybody lives here. And yes, there was some iffy business with the Native Americans when we, but and I'm not downplaying that. But if we go back, frankly, conquest is the story of mankind. It's been happening since, for better or worse. Sometimes, I don't want to dwell on that, but it's a sticky situation. And of course, this isn't a civics program, but
well, we all know what's going on. Yeah. But as a whole, throughout history, we've had the longest period of freedom.
Yeah. And by many metrics, these are the best times. Like, more people are getting educations, less people are starving. There is less war now than I think at any period maybe ever in the history of the human story. Per capita, like less war. I read several metrics recently that point to, they indicate that this is the most prosperous, highest global GDP or whatever that.
Right. Yeah.
And the very best times that we've ever had as a species, as mankind, is actually right now. Yet we find so much to bitch about.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it's the very best times for more people than not.
And we still bitch about everything.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, to switch it up just completely, if you don't mind, I'm going to take it on a complete different switch. I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and like I said, I've read a lot of your stuff, and I picked out one thing that I wrote. I had to write a note down, but it was like, you joined AASR, so it's Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Masonry's. Were you Northern and Southern, or you did both, or just Southern? Both.
I did both. I did Northern first,
and then you went to LA, and I think you went South. I think is what you said.
Yeah,
and then you bounced out, though. Was it something? I just wanted to ask you why you stopped.
Oh, I see. So yeah, I did Northern Masonic jurisdiction in the Valley of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and then we moved to Los Angeles, and I did Southern jurisdiction at the Valley of Pasadena. And then I came down to Phoenix, and Scottish Rite wasn't really happening down here too much.
Makes sense,
at that time. So I demitted, on great terms, able to come back whenever I want.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to focus on Blue Lodge, and I was doing York Rite at that time, and I was getting into the SRICF college.
Right.
So I just gently closed the door on that for a minute, and focusing on these other things. And then about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, sometime during COVID, I was doing a presentation. I got called to do a presentation for Valley of DC, Supreme Council, one of the bodies in there, or Lodge of Perfection, I think. Adam Goldman called me up, and I was like, yeah, but the thing is I demitted several years ago.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, let's see what we could do, because I think that's going to be a problem.
Oh, right.
So he went and talked to somebody over there, I forget who, at Valley of DC. And then he was like, okay, we've got a deal for you. Do this presentation, and we will waive your reinstatement fees, which is like $300 or $400.
Right.
And he said, and we'll waive your first year's dues.
Nice.
And you can be a member of Valley of DC. So I was like, done deal. Let's
go.
Let's do that, because that's a pretty bitchin' dues card to have.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
DC. Valley of DC is like, that's Scottish Rite as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, cool, man. I was just thinking, like I said, it was like probably like a year or so ago or whatever from the podcast you did, and you were like, yeah. So I just kind of wanted to know if it was something that turned you away from it, or you just didn't have time, or if it was like, there was anything in there that you were just not jiving with,
No, there's a little dirt in there, but I kind of steered clear of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's dirt everywhere. There's dirt. Speaking of dirt, so reading your stuff, I mean, in talking OTO, Golden Dawn is OTO too as well. But the thing that I've noticed, and so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, more than I do, but OTO pre-Crowley was more like an accepted transition past Blue Lodge. It was like OTO was your fourth degree, minus York Rite or whatever else, right? That OTO was like your next logical step after Blue Lodge, and it was a series of, basically it's the continuation, I want to say.
It was almost like a German like AMD or something like that.
Right.
In that it was a bunch of like, it was a collection of rites into one sort of super appendant body.
So they took part of the York Rite, they took part of different degrees and kind of jammed it all together.
Exactly. They took some things from Memphis Mitzrayim. They took some things from some continental sort of Scottish Rite stuff. They took some things that we would recognize as being part of the York Rite in America, and they kind of put all these rites together. And I think Theodore Royce was in close contact with both Westcott and Yarker. Jonathan Yarker.
It's amazing how all these names keep coming full circle, isn't
it? Right. So these guys were rabid collectors of rights, from what I understand. I'm not a historian.
No, but it seems like they were just kind of getting their hands on everything they could, manuscripts and rights and everything. Yeah.
They loved to collect rights, particularly people like Yarker and Royce. And then Royce put together this body in Germany, the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was the order of the Eastern Temple. And then Crowley enters the fold.
Fucks everything up.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Who's to say? I think there. I'm not sure if he really fucked it up. Royce actually introduced some sex magic stuff before Crowley did.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, because Royce was familiar with Beverly Pascal Randolph. And the what was it, Brotherhood of Luxor, or Brotherhood of Light? There was an American in the South. There was an American sex magic group
based in Egyptian magical ceremonial, right? Yeah, and I can't remember the name of it either, but yeah.
Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, or whatever they were called. And Blavatsky hated Beverly Pascal Randolph, and there was this whole thing, and he brought this sort of Western Tantra to the scene. Royce knew about it somehow. Again, I'm not a historian, but I know this much. And then there was Emma Hardin Bridge. I forget her name. Anyway, she wrote this book, something about the bridegroom. I forget. It was required reading when I did some OTO stuff.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, there were sex magic lineages. Kind of, Crowley wasn't the one who totally introduced that,
right.
But they did make that the central secret of Crowley OTO.
Right. So there's like the top degree or the end, whatever from that order. Right. It was
that's their central. I mean, I don't know.
No. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just, it's interesting to see, because it goes back to there's this Indian aspect of that as well, where
Tantra,
and it kind of goes back into
Kundalini and stuff.
And just, basically getting yourself, close, but then capturing that energy and then shooting it back up to all through your chakras. And
yeah, I think I haven't really done that. I wouldn't know how to like transmute my semen and kind of make it go into my brain. I'm not even sure how people do that. If that's what we're talking about, I haven't done it. I wouldn't know where to begin. I mean, are you supposed to get your semen to go up your spine?
I think so. I don't know.
Well, how the hell does that work? With a straw? What do you got to do? Hook some pump up in the back of your neck and just pump it up there? Yep.
Yeah, you just got to get somebody to jam it up there somehow.
Getting some semen in my brain. Is that desirable somehow?
I have no idea. I mean, the shit you read, I don't know, because people everybody takes everything and twists it anyway. But
yeah,
so it's the thing that I have seen and I'm just seeing in the UFO world, right? And this is just ancillary, and I have no proof of this or anything like that. But it seems that a lot of the people that are into the more occult aspect of the phenomenon or the UFO phenomenon and all that stuff have ties to OTO, and not in ways that you would expect. A lot of them are authors or theologians or whatever, and they've done work, written authors, things like that, and they have like a kind of they're dabbling their feet into some of the OTO stuff, and I just wanted to see if there was like some type of something I was missing, because I haven't that was something I've never explored before.
What's cool about the OTO stuff? Have you done like the commandery?
No,
I
stopped. Yeah, I stopped at commandery because at the time I was a poor college kid and I couldn't afford $1,000 hat and fucking sword.
Oh, I didn't buy the hat itself.
I thought it was required to have the whole thing. For here it was anyway. You had to have the whole, get up.
Oh no, you could still do the degrees.
Oh, okay.
At least in Phoenix Yorkite bodies, you could.
Ah.
So I did those degrees. They're great degrees. I mean, I particularly love the Royal Arch and then the Council, but right. The Commandery, with the Templarism and stuff, and we read about Templarism in proximity to Freemasonry, and I don't think they're very connected, but I do like the idea, and I like this Baphometic idea of Templarism. What I liked about OTO degrees, and I did some OTO degrees,
right?
Before I found a Golden Dawn tradition, I was doing SRICF and some OTO stuff, trying to approximate a Golden Dawn thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I didn't know of a good Golden Dawn lineage at that time.
Right.
But I have since found one some years ago.
Right.
So I don't really screw around with OTO anymore. Just my own thing, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I did like about and I liked a lot of things about OTO, but one of the main things I liked about their grades or their degrees was there's more of a Saracenic reference point than a Christian Templar reference point. So it's almost like you're seeing the other side of the thing.
Wow, that's a dichotomy there. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's still basically Crusader kind of chivalric stuff, but it's more from this Saladin sort of Hashashin Ishmaeli kind of different perspective,
right? Which is kind of interesting to see.
Yeah,
how that is and how.
Well, I think it completes a picture on this Baphometic picture, because when we talk about Baphomet, this was in like Chinon parchment, and we know that the Templars at the preceptories had Baphomet heads. Like they found them. We know Kapud 58M.
Yeah,
they have found these heads. Yalla inscribed on them. They would say Yalla and cry loudly to Baphomet. And so it's a strange thing that they would say under torture. Various Templars, how would they get together and say, "Hey, let's pull a fast one and just talk about Baphomet"? It's like there would be no reason to do that.
But if you're getting pulled by horses from all your appendages,
quartered, right?
Yeah, you're getting quartered. You're gonna go, yeah, it's Baphomet. So
anyway, like I think here's my kind of hypothesis, and it's just based on whatever.
Yeah.
I think that the Templars and the Saracens on Temple Mount or around the Holy Land obviously we're in close proximity with each other.
Of course.
And I think that maybe the Hashashin, Hassani Sabah and his Hashashin and things like that, how they would do like hash and wine tinctures.
Yeah, and they would
to
ceremonial.
To administer entheogenic rituals and certain initiatory rituals with this brazen head, this oracular head.
Right.
So I'm not sure. Nobody really knows what precisely went down, but we do have some things from Templar confessions that give us an idea, and some of it sounds Saracenic. And I think that there was a commingling of initiatory currents there. And
I completely agree, and I think without revealing anything, but you get into the whole Scottish Rite part of it, and there's a definitely in one of the degrees where there's a I don't even know if I'm allowed to say anything. But I'm trying to remember because I took part in one of the degrees. It was funny. It was like my first or second year, and I went in and I was in for I think it was the 19th degree, and I showed up and it was like, hey, can you help us with these other 3 degrees? And it's like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just jump in, right? But where it has the whole basic commingling of the Saracenic side with the Masonic side, and basically bringing in the Saracenic side to the Christian Masonic side of the order as brothers,
which is also what the shrine does.
Right. Of course. Yes. Of course. Right. So it brings in other traditions.
I remember being a kid, obviously. I didn't even know what Freemasonry was, but I remember being a kid, like less than 10 years old.
Right.
And I saw on this big old like Cadillac or a Lincoln or something just parked on the side of the street, and there was an emblem on it. And I know it today to be a shrine emblem, but I remember seeing this emblem when I was a kid and thinking, and I had a pretty developed thought for that age. I was like, now I think these people are Christian, but why do they have all this sort of pagan Egyptian kind of stuff going on? And it wasn't those terms, but that was
that's what your process. Yeah.
That was the thoughts. I was like, I think these people, I think they're Christian like I am,
Right.
But
why are they messing around with the
why do they have this weird looking stuff? I vaguely recognized it as being okay, this is some sort of like maybe religious order or something like that.
Right. That's cool though that you had that. That's pretty interesting to remember.
I was probably 7, 8 years old.
Wow, you put that together. And then it goes back. It's full circle to symbology. When you just show somebody a symbol or an anagram, like here, and it invokes I would dare say a subconscious or macrocosm response, where it's just kind of like the collective conscious response, where it's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. Like it does something to you without
just like every beaver on every continent knows how to make a dam, and they don't need to confer with each other.
Seriously, yeah, you're right. It's a great analogy. Yeah, they do. They just know, right?
Right.
They see a tree, we're gonna cut it down. We're gonna make this happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean that's it, man. I don't know. So that was like one of the notes I took down. I don't know what the other ones was. Oh wow. Space is without time was one of the things that we were talking about.
Oh, space and time?
Yeah, space and time, how they're interrelated but not, and they're malleable, I think, in terms of
what we were talking about last weekend when I was in town was the 360 degree circle.
The 360 degree circle, which is amazing. If you got a couple minutes, I'm sorry I've taken a bunch of your time, but man.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
So we owe that when we talk about, when I talk about this in my presentations and stuff, it's usually in the context of the Masonic Anno Lucas, which is 4000 BCE. And around that time, and certainly in that age, we get Sumerian culture, the civilization of Sumer, in the first of the Mesopotamian cultures that we know of, right?
Which is massive because they were the first to domesticate animals, farming,
civilization.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So again, we found out about Göbekli Tepe later, but that doesn't necessarily qualify as civilization, because civilization, there are certain criteria that have to be met. Urbanization, art expression, agriculture, animal husbandry, stuff like that. So Sumer, we find the whole package. That is civilization. And we have, and there is an intellectual sort of current that goes with that, which is they also had astronomers that they were the first to note that the annual solar circuit was about 360 days.
Right.
An annual solar cycle through the ecliptic. And then they used days as degrees, essentially. So the 360-degree circle is essentially the same as our year. And this 360-degree circle, this is what I find so mind-blowing.
Right.
It is still the basis of the sexagesimal language that we use to talk about everything space and time. So today, me and you, John, when we're talking about it's around the corner, or it's 90 degrees or a 45-degree angle, and this building something and geometry, and when we talk about what time is it, it's 6:30. Right. There's seconds and minutes and degrees and things, and days, and 72 and 96 and 30 and 60 and 12, and all of these numbers are sexagesimal numbers. They fit this they're not decimal like digits.
Right.
These are counting integers. These are what the decimal system comes from our digits, and it's what we use to count. Johnny has 3 apples, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
But when we're talking space and time, we use a different system. We don't use decimal for that.
Right.
We use sexagesimal. And sexagesimal is 12 and 96 and 30 and 72 and all these numbers, right? 360, 180, 90, 45. Right. And that's those are space-time numbers, right? And they come from an annual solar circuit, and they come from about 6,000 years ago in ancient Sumer, and we've not thought of another way to talk about space and time since then. Right. So if you're into, like, I know you're an alien guy, and you're probably into Sitchin and stuff, or have been at one point into Sitchin.
Right.
Who knows what sort of Epic of Gilgamesh sort of transmission of alien Anunnaki sort of knowledge laid the sexagesimal system on these people, or a la Tellinger, was it some sort of like Central African, like 250,000-year-old gold mines where they were, people were this, human beings were a gold mining slave culture for the proto-Anunnaki or whatever they were.
For monatomic gold and all. Yeah, right, exactly. Who knows, right?
Yeah, so what we do know is around the time of the Masonic Anna Lucas and the dawn of civilization, as we've come to qualify it, is when we came up with, when mankind, particularly the Sumerians, came up with the sexagesimal system, the 360-degree circle. Again, you don't talk about a 90-degree, you don't talk about a square, unless you're in the absence of reference to a 360-degree circle. That's what it is. What is a square? The fourth part of a circle.
Yeah.
Right. So space and time is all sexagesimal, and it's all from right around the Anno Lucas. So I think our Anno Lucas kind of points to that Taurian age circle, and it's fascinating to me. I worked on it a lot in both, actually all 3 of my books, because I got a new book coming out.
Yeah, your new book coming out. Let's talk about that, man, because we got to pump that up. I mean, I saw the cover. It looks rad, but I'm sorry I'm keeping you. I know it's late.
No, it's fine.
But I'd love to hear about the new book. Just, if you got a second, because it seems, just go ahead.
Yeah. So the new book is, it's called The Archetypal Temple, and it's a collection of essays from the last few years, since the last book, basically.
Right.
And the overarching theme through these essays is the temple archetype. So what's the best way to put this? Here's what I'd like to convey through this sort of compendium of essays, and here's what I think the big theme is, and it's kind of represented in the artwork that Travis Lawrence did on the cover.
And that's what I was getting at. Like, I saw the cover, and I was like, and it just really, like we were just talking about, the symbology of it just kind of strikes you, and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, it does something to you.
You'll notice that, there's like a cave and then a primitive temple on top of that, and this temple archetype built as a tell on top of the others in this full spectrum of the temple archetype is kind of what we were imagining with that.
What I got.
Yeah. So here's what I mean by that, to reduce that down to a couple of sentences, is we as Masons, I believe my sort of thesis is this central project of Freemasonry is to build temples.
Mm-hmm.
Freemasons are builders. We are charged to build temples.
Mm-hmm.
The temple building is our project. Now, what does that mean? So to talk about that, we have the inner temple in man. We have the physical temple. We have the mnemonic temple. We have the temple that we erect through memory work. Because you'll notice when you're memorizing stuff in a Masonic lodge, whether it's your catechism or your a lecture or degree work or anything, it's always like, what did you do next? I went to the West, and the senior warden taught me how to wear my apron, and then you always go. Then I went to the East, then I went to the South, and I sat in the Northeast corner, and you're always kind of orienting yourself. It's constant orientation, and if you're remembering this stuff, you are making a mnemonic temple in your mind. I know that you right now as a Freemason, I know that you and I share this, that we both have an inner mnemonic temple that I know it by heart, you know? Yeah. And since all Freemasons have that, because we are all builders, since all of us have that, we are collectively projecting that into our egregore. So there's an egregorical temple above that. Right. And then there is an astral temple, a cosmic temple, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For which we
strive to, yeah, right.
To which we fit ourselves as living stones, you know. Yeah. So as we erect all of these various hermetic planes of the temple archetype, from the grossest, densest material plane to the rarest etheric kind of cosmic plane, kind of transmission.
It's like a lineage, kind of, almost, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that I kind of position the Freemason as builder, and his project being the erection of the various hermetic planes of the temple archetype.
That's awesome, man. That's the new book. I can't wait. When is it coming out?
9/22, which is the autumnal equinox, and I think it was 8:17 a.m. on Wednesday, 9/22. Wednesday is Wednos, the day of Mercury,
right?
The day of Hermes, and at 8:17, I think it was 8:17 a.m. Mercury will be, I think, in Gemini on the ascendant at that time in Phoenix, Arizona.
Nice.
So I wanted to pick a good astrological election, because, you know, in astrology, particularly electional astrology, catarchic astrology, they say set it off on a good astrological footing.
That's super rad, man. I'm so pumped. I mean, your books, I'm going to post all the links to all your books and everywhere to get them. I mean, Magick, Myth, Masonry, Approaching the Middle Chamber, and the new book is called
The Archetypal Temple.
The Archetypal Temple. Anybody, and these books are for Masons or non-Masons. I mean, if you're a Mason, you're obviously going to pick up on things that are just going to, you know, you're going to check boxes. But if you just pick this book up, that you're not Mason, if you have any type of inkling in any Western esotericism, or if you just want to get involved in it, your books are great, man. They're awesome. And I really appreciate you, all the work you do, and I really appreciate you putting up with me and taking time to hang out and talk.
Oh, it's a pleasure, brother.
I really appreciate it, man.
Good to see you, and it was a pleasure to meet you over last weekend. And do give me a link when this comes out. I'll post it to my maybe my blog or my. I do have a blog. I have a website. Did you see my website?
Yeah, websites. JaimePaulLamb.com. It's great. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we can reach out to you for tarot readings, for all kinds of stuff, right? People can reach out to you and hit you up for pretty much anything.
Astrology and tarot reading.
Astrology and tarot reading
and music stuff.
The music stuff is great.
Yeah, I've got a method. If you look on there, I've got a method of playing one's natal chart at the harmonium through various Hermetic correspondences. So,
which is awesome. I saw the one you did about Hiroshima.
Oh yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's intense. But that's like, we could do a whole nother show about it. Let's just do more shows.
Yeah, anytime. So anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I hope to talk to you soon, and definitely send me a link.
I will. Thanks a bunch, brother. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thanks, brother. All right.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.